When my mother-in-law was asked if I would be preparing the New Year's meal, she responded with a dramatic wave of her hands and a burst of laughter. "Absolutely not. That's impossible. My daughter-in-law can't cook to save her life," she exclaimed, proudly calling me the hopeless housewife who couldn't even manage a New Year's feast. She declared herself the sole authority in the kitchen. Her laughter wasn't just annoying. It felt like an outright insult. After enduring her derision for so long, I knew it was time to stand up for myself. My name is Natalie. I'm 29, and I got married last year. As a full-time housewife, I take pleasure in cooking, and thankfully, my husband isn't too picky. Anything edible seems to satisfy him. He's a kind man, and we live in a beautifully renovated home with a dream kitchen, complete with a large island. It should have been the perfect setup, but there's always been one persistent issue: my mother-in-law. She prides herself on her culinary skills and views me as a complete disappointment in the kitchen. Worse still, she doesn't keep her opinions to herself. Just the other day, while I was outside doing laundry, I overheard her gossiping loudly with the neighbor's wife. "My daughter-in-law can't even cook properly. It's dreadful. I wonder about her upbringing. My poor son is so unfortunate to be stuck with her," she lamented. Each word felt like a thorn piercing through me. It was bad enough to endure her critiques of my cooking, but to hear her belittle my family was completely unacceptable. I realized I couldn't let this continue. It was time to take a stand. I've always held my parents in high regard, cherishing the countless lessons they taught me. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law never bothered to understand or appreciate those values. Instead, she chose to belittle me at every opportunity. Today was just another chapter in her ongoing series of critiques, her biting remarks echoing throughout the neighborhood. She doesn't even know how to season food properly. If I don't cook, there's no flavor at all. Why did my son have to marry someone like her? The neighbors chimed in, adding fuel to the fire with their jabs, questioning why she hadn't taught me herself. I muttered under my breath, "Enough is enough." I wish they would all just stop. My hand gripped a glass so tightly that it cracked. That evening, when my husband Daniel came home and my mother-in-law was conveniently in the shower, I saw my chance to finally let it all out. "Can't you do something about your mother?" I pleaded with Daniel as I helped him out of his jacket. "She's going around the neighborhood every day, making me out to be some hopeless cook." I opened up about my mother-in-law's relentless behavior, feeling it was necessary. Daniel isn't particularly close to his mother and genuinely cares about me, so I expected his support. Maybe even hoped he would defend me or, at the very least, acknowledge the strain her words were causing. But his reaction took me by surprise. "Well, Mom has always been very particular about cooking," he said, scratching his head, looking genuinely troubled. The word particular hung in the air, so light yet laden with accusation. I almost fired back with a comment about her overpowering seasoning, but held back, staring at him in disbelief, wondering if he truly understood the impact of his mother's words. "Come on, she's a good cook, right?" he asked nonchalantly. I was taken aback. "Well, I don't know much about good or bad cooking," he continued, "but please just try to get along with Mom. That's what a wife is supposed to do, isn't it?" With that, he left the room, leaving me stunned. Was this some kind of joke? Thoughts swirled in my mind. A good cook. A wife's duty. What does that even mean? Frustration surged within me. As much as I hated to admit it, my mother-in-law's cooking was far from delightful. She had monopolized the kitchen for the past year, ostensibly to spare me the effort, but I had never truly enjoyed her meals. She firmly believed that piling on the spices equated to better flavor. Daniel, raised on those robust tastes, always finished his plate without a word of complaint, but for me, eating such heavily spiced food was a daily struggle. Not only was it unpleasant, but I feared it might ruin my palate and wasn't great for my health. Each mealtime had become a silent battle, where I forced myself to finish my portion out of fear of the consequences of leaving any behind. Alone in the quiet of our bedroom, I felt a wave of helplessness wash over me. I let out a heavy sigh. The real shock wasn't that Daniel failed to criticize his mother's cooking style, it was that he didn't seem to take my feelings seriously. In moments like these, I found myself missing the familiar, comforting meals from my parents' home. As the year drew to a close, so did the anticipation for the New Year's celebrations. This would be my first New Year since marrying into this family traditionally marked by a large gathering and a feast prepared by my mother-in-law. However, instead of joy, I felt a sense of dread as I pondered how to navigate familial expectations and the overpowering flavors that had become a regular part of my life. When Daniel casually mentioned that it was customary for the family to gather and enjoy the feast prepared by his mother for New Year's, I couldn't help but silently question the tradition. Outwardly, I managed only a half-hearted "oh." It seemed the relatives who eagerly attended each year had grown to love her cooking, or perhaps they had simply become accustomed to it. Despite feeling a twinge of sympathy for them, I couldn't shake the slight dread creeping in. Even though my mother-in-law frequently criticized my supposedly bland culinary skills, my parents had instilled a strong confidence in my cooking abilities. I secretly longed to cook for everyone and maybe even introduce some subtler flavors to Daniel's palate. With newfound resolve, I decided it was time to discuss the New Year's feast with my mother-in-law. As she bustled around the kitchen, pulling out large plates and pots, I seized the moment. "I'd like to help with the New Year's feast," I ventured, hoping to contribute to the upcoming celebration. But as she turned to face me, her expression was one of immediate dismissal. "Natalie, you can't even cook properly. How can you prepare food for the New Year's celebration? We'll have not just our family but all the relatives over. You know that, right?" she retorted. "But I'm part of this family now. It's my duty as a wife to contribute," I insisted, determination rising within me. I argued, my voice laced with desperation, but she simply shook her head. "Do you want to create an awkward atmosphere for the new year? Everyone comes expecting my cooking. We can't disappoint them. Please, if you understand, don't interfere." Frustration bubbled within me as I watched her dismiss my offer, turning back to her preparations. When New Year's Day arrived, the house quickly filled with about 20 relatives, more than I had anticipated, many of whom I hadn't seen since the wedding. As each guest arrived, I greeted them warmly, ushering them into the spacious dining room that had once overwhelmed me when I first moved in. The unusually large room buzzed with energy, perfectly suited for such gatherings. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was already deep in conversation with the arriving relatives, taking center stage in the kitchen and being the heart of the celebration. During the festive preparations, a relative curiously asked, "By the way, is Natalie preparing the feast this year?" My mother-in-law waved her hands dismissively and laughed. "That's impossible. My daughter-in-law can't cook at all. She's a hopeless housewife who can't even manage a New Year's feast. I handle all the cooking around here," she declared. Her laughter sounded harsh and unwelcoming. It was not a light-hearted joke, but a pointed insult directed at me. At that moment, I reached my breaking point. "Mother-in-law, please let me prepare the New Year's feast this time. If it doesn't turn out well, you can always make a palate-cleansing dish," I suggested, breaking the tense silence that ensued. After a brief pause, the room began to buzz with whispers from the relatives. "Well, I certainly don't want a disappointing meal, but they say practice makes perfect, right?" my mother-in-law said, her tone conceited yet reluctantly acknowledging the shifting tide of opinion among the relatives in favor of giving me a chance. "All right, fine. If it doesn't work out, Freda can step in," she added. "Very well then, Nat, you can take the reins this year," she stated, her words tinged with reluctance. "But remember, I can always step in, ladies and gentlemen, so indulge this hopeless housewife's whims for once," she announced, her tone dripping with patronization. But with my heart swelling with pride and determination, I was ready to showcase my cooking skills to everyone. This was my chance to change their perceptions. I poured my heart into preparing the meal, and as I presented the beautifully arranged feast on a large platter, exclamations of admiration filled the room. "Wow, the meal turned out perfectly. It looks delicious. Well done, Natalie. This isn't something just anyone could pull off," they praised enthusiastically. Amidst their compliments, my mother-in-law, who had just returned from shopping for her so-called palate-cleansing dish, glanced at my spread. "It looks all right, I suppose, but it's probably bland," she remarked, emphasizing the word probably and clearly reluctant to acknowledge my success. Ignoring her comments, I focused on distributing paper plates and forks to the relatives, encouraging them to enjoy the meal. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law hurried back into the kitchen to prepare what she deemed necessary, keeping a watchful eye on us as if expecting to intervene at any moment. The relatives tentatively began sampling the dishes I had prepared. As I watched the guests sample the dishes, a murmur of approval began to build. My mother-in-law, not one to miss an opportunity, chuckled with apparent satisfaction and announced loudly, "See? I told you this is why she's the incompetent daughter-in-law." She turned to the crowd, adding, "You don't need to force yourselves. I'll prepare the palate-cleansing dish right away." tone dripped with triumph, as if she expected to salvage what she assumed would be a culinary disaster. However, her satisfaction was quickly overshadowed by the sounds of genuine delight coming from the dining room. "This is the first time I've tasted New Year's food this delicious. It's like something from a fancy hotel. Natalie, where did you learn to cook like this?" exclaimed one of the relatives, their praise electrifying the atmosphere. Amidst the lively crowd, my mother-in-law stood momentarily stunned into silence by the unexpected approval. With everyone's attention now on me and none on her, I felt a surge of confidence. It was the perfect moment to reveal my background. "I grew up in a family that is deeply passionate about food," I began, my voice steady and clear. "My family owns a renowned French restaurant celebrated for its authentic cuisine and even recognized in the Michelin Guide. My father is the 5th generation overseeing culinary operations, and my mother, from a long lineage of chefs, supports him wholeheartedly. From a young age, I absorbed the art of cooking by observing my parents, honing my skills as they expertly crafted every dish. By the time when I was in upper elementary school, I earnestly learned the art of cooking from my parents. Although my brother is poised to inherit the restaurant, the culinary knowledge they passed down remains a deep source of pride for me." This revelation shifted the atmosphere in the room, further cementing my newfound respect among the relatives and leaving my mother-in-law to contemplate the unexpected turn of events. As the room buzzed with impressed voices, I felt a profound connection to my heritage, finally proud to share my true culinary roots. That's why I found it impossible to tolerate my mother-in-law's dismissive remarks and actions that undermined my skills. To her, dismissing my cooking was akin to denying my parents' legacy and the restaurant that had been a cornerstone of our family for generations. I had mentioned this before I got married, but it seemed to have fallen on deaf ears. My mother-in-law often treated me condescendingly, viewing me as just the daughter of a quaint countryside restaurant. Daniel, largely indifferent to culinary nuances, probably couldn't differentiate between a family-run establishment and authentic French cuisine. I sometimes questioned why I had married into this family, a thought I muttered under my breath as I turned to the sound of someone calling my name, meeting the gaze of several pairs of expectant eyes. "We have seconds. I want more." Despite the generous portions I had prepared, everything had been completely devoured. A wave of happiness washed over me, and I felt tears welling up. Receiving praise for my cooking should have felt routine, something I had known before marrying, yet over the past year, I seemed to have forgotten that sensation entirely. "Yes, I'll prepare more right away," I declared, renewed determination surging through me as I hurried out of the room. As I passed by my motionless mother-in-law, I noted that she had, after all, brought some ingredients, despite her earlier criticisms. "Mother-in-law, I'll use these ingredients," I announced, but she offered no reply. The groceries sat untouched in the kitchen as I reached into the supermarket bag to inspect its contents. Just then, 4 women entered the kitchen. Could you teach us how to cook too?" one of them asked, their faces eager with anticipation. I glanced up to see them lined up before me, their ages varying from my own to that of my mother-in-law's. This unexpected request bolstered my confidence. Here was a chance not just to share my heritage but also to foster a bond over our mutual love of cooking, transcending generational and family boundaries. It was a moment of validation, a chance to demonstrate the depth of my skills and the rich culinary legacy I carried. As I looked into their eyes, each gleamed with the same eager curiosity. "The food was amazing. We'd love to learn from you," they enthused. Hearing those words ignited something within me. I had never considered teaching cooking before, but witnessing their admiration awakened a newfound desire to share my knowledge. With a smile, I gladly agreed to teach them, and the room erupted with excitement. The group began animatedly discussing how they would impress their husbands by honing their cooking skills. Thus began an impromptu cooking class. My mother-in-law watched us from a distance, her expression unreadable as she silently tidied up. As we concluded the class and the dishes were served, they were met with enthusiastic praise. I must admit, Grace's cooking can be a bit too salty for my taste, but Natalie's dishes are delicate and refined, truly professional French cuisine. Jennifer, one of the participants, beamed with joy at the recognition. Feeling a mix of pride and unease, I offered a faint smile to my mother-in-law, but she remained focused on cleaning, undisturbed by the ongoing praises. Just as I pondered how to ease the tension, Daniel stepped in with a decisive statement. I actually prefer Natelli's cooking. Mom's strong flavors have always made me concerned about salt and health. Going forward, Natelli should handle the cooking regularly. His words seemed to take my mother-in-law completely by surprise, and before long, she quietly withdrew to her room. The news of my culinary abilities spread quickly among my relatives, marking a significant shift in how they viewed me and my place in the family. This unexpected turn of events not only bolstered my confidence but also subtly shifted the household dynamics in ways I hadn't anticipated. As word of my culinary talent spread, I soon found myself receiving requests to teach cooking classes. Initially hesitant, I remembered the joy from the impromptu New Year's cooking session and decided to embrace the opportunity. People genuinely valued my skills, and through word of mouth, my reputation as a skilled chef of authentic French cuisine grew rapidly. Before I knew it, I was featured in media outlets and celebrated as a housewife renowned for her cooking. Requests for my classes began pouring in from all over the country. Life, I learned, is wonderfully unpredictable. This unexpected journey even led to a feature about me in a prominent cooking magazine. In the article, I spoke about my culinary heritage and my father's influence on my skills. As for my mother-in-law, who had once spread less than flattering rumors about my cooking abilities, she ceased commenting on culinary matters altogether after the shift in family and public opinion. Over time, she gradually stopped cooking entirely, leaving me with full responsibility for meals in our home. Despite the increased busyness, we now live together peacefully, a significant change from our earlier days.